So our grand finale, it's been an amazing 4 months. I have learned a ton and I'm so grateful for each of you taking this journey and commitment. I know it's been a lot. So briefly, we're gonna, we've talked a lot about our norms, and I'm gonna be our norm champion today. And it's not even on here, but culture of safety, sort of related, is just really coming from a growth mindset that I suspect we're all, engaging in territory that's new. And so just really like understanding that this is about the beginning of a conversation, and that we're all just learning together. And, just briefly, we've gone from really August, we started in August, storytelling for change in our narratives, and then really learning in a different frame perhaps of thinking about building relationships and building teams, and here we're all in launching them. And the goal is that this really feels like a celebration of how much we've learned together, and also planting seeds for where we're headed. So yeah, and we have other people joining too. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for joining. So team 1 is gonna start us off for the next 50 minutes or so. And then we'll have a little break before 2, and then team 2.
This is just for rest.
Yeah, team 2 will present the landscape analysis of decarbonizing healthcare. Then team 3 about our proposed partnership process. Then we'll spend about 10 minutes together doing the feedback questionnaire and form, so that you can have an opportunity to share kind of what really worked well for you in the Catalyst, what didn't. Then we'll do a closing circle, and then T will join us for the very end. So the last thing is time is always tight, as we all know, and I just want to frame this that holding to our team's timing is really about making space for everybody and trying to make it an equity practice. So on that note, I will pass it to team 1.
Ashley, do you think you're able to do the slides and to control them? Because I can't. You have our link to our group slides, I think.
I do. I just made you a co-host, so if you want to try.
I can't do it on my work.
And you're
yeah, I'm down on the network. So if someone else can do it.
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, Race, excellent. Okay.
Okay, Race, I'm going to make you a co-host.
Sorry, I'm making Ashley use my laptop, which is not her laptop, so she's
all right,
slower.
Race, you're up.
Okay.
Woohoo!
Hopefully you guys can see that. Do you know how to do presentation mode? Because I have no idea on Google Slides.
It looks, oh, do you see where it says slideshow, Race, with that little arrow? Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna start, and then I'm gonna pass the baton on to my teammates. So we'll just go ahead and get started. We're team 1. We're going to give you kind of a broad overview of the Catalyst Collective and some of the things that we think are just super important key learnings from just the collective experience, and what our strategic principle that we came up with was. So just right off the bat, just to introduce my awesome teammates, it's myself, Susan Bradshaw, Nightingale Wakigera, Jennifer Graber, and Angelina Kranz-Yoon. Our team's purpose is to inspire Climate Health Now members and to demonstrate the power of storytelling that incorporates relationships and team building for community organizing. So we really felt like that encapsulated so many of the activities that we did throughout this Catalyst Collective. Just in terms of, we're calling this slide Our Movement and Our Moment. So as Ashley said, this started in September and here we are in December, and it seems like so much has happened even with the pandemic going on related to climate. And so it was really interesting to be able to participate with people that were, climate health soulmates, but at the same time experiencing the larger world and the news coming in about all of these different climate catastrophes and climate movements happening all around the world. It really felt a little surreal that we were, in our own kind of capsule, but also part of a much larger global movement. And so in September, we did mostly storytelling and learning about public narrative and why that's important. In October, we really focused on relationship building. In November, we focused on team building. And in December, we really worked to bring it all together to build our climate movement. This is something that Ashley really shared right off the bat and has shared multiple times. And I thought that this was really important, which is that, the 3 conditions necessary for effective teams include a shared purpose, which needs to be clear, consequential, and challenging. So the 3 C's, the right people with the key talents, networks, and identities that will enable them to grow. And I'll talk more about networks in a minute, and collaborative capacity. And also a bounded and stable team who is committed and clear about, who our teammates are. So we are very fortunate to have great leadership and also great teammates that really allowed us to have that stability throughout the many different, it feels like a decade, but it's only been a few months, things that happened in this last fall. In terms of the 6 steps for launching an effective team, we thought that this was an important key slide also. So we just wanted to share this verbatim. The 6 steps for launching an effective team include why each of us is here. So a story of self, building a shared purpose, creating norms about how we will work together, establishing clear roles by matching people, skills, and responsibilities with those roles, deciding how we decide. So, making sure that the process for decision-making is clear, and then establishing a team identity. Some of it was a little goofy, but I think it was really fun because we all look forward to having a song at the end of every session and having lots of chances to break out with all of our Catalyst Collective teammates and really getting to know each other and then coming up with lots of different team identities and team names. So those were the 6 steps that I feel like we really did live through and have lived experience with, but will also hopefully help illustrate how all of these built up to create, this larger vision and strategic principle. So in terms of the shared purpose, I just wanted to, I'm going to pass on the baton to one of my teammates, but, I really focused while I was putting this presentation together on this really special term called catalyst. And I think that was such a well-named concept for what we do. And there's really, whole books about this. This is a book called Impact Networks, which has these figures and there's just a lot written about, that you can read about the theory of social catalysts, but it's nice to be able to participate at the same time and just experience it ourselves. So I really feel like each of us came in as one of these dots, as you can imagine, or each of our organizations represents one of these dots, and we have a few connections. But then this collective allowed us to, become a hub and spoke model, but then also to branch out in other directions to then create our own networks. And eventually, what we're trying to hope for is a really dense network that's not redundant, but really vibrant and has a lot of different connections that we can then call on in order to achieve our own personal and professional goals related to climate health. So I think that's what this is really all about is, how do we catalyze the catalysts? And I really feel fortunate that we've been able to do that during this fall. My own personal journey just has been all about something called C6. So I'm an emergency physician and a public health professional in Central California. And I've really been trying to launch with some of my other Catalyst teammates here, something called C6, which is Central California Climate Change Clinical Collaboration. And I really just have gotten so much out of this Catalyst Collective in teaching me how to become, a more connected dot. I really feel like C6 is just one of these dots that's just kind of floating in the ether, but I've really gotten a lot more skills and insights about how to make sure that I'm part of a network that can be really productive because all of us need to work together. So that's really all I have for my section. And I think I'm going to be able to pass it on to one of my teammates who's going to be talking about really just in more detail about storytelling as a leadership practice and storytelling for change. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, and thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Well, good afternoon. My name is Susan Bradshaw, and I'm going to try to be very brief, but yet concise. Storytelling has been used for centuries. It's a way that people share experiences. It's a way that people learn, and it's been used to motivate and inspire others. More recently, it has been used as part of an actual presidential campaign. In 2008, Obama used it. He actually had volunteers attend Camp Obama. And one of the things that they learned was leadership development practice called public narrative. So we should feel fortunate that we have the opportunity to learn something that was taught at a presidential campaign camp. This practice was developed by Marshall Gans, and he's a longtime United Farm Worker organizer, and currently he's a professor at Harvard University. And so if anyone wants more information, they can Google Gans, and he has a variety of videos that you can use, but it really is a very good practice to learn. And all of us have stories that we can tell and that we can use to motivate others. The one thing about telling stories is that it connects to both sides of our brain. Not only do we learn, but also it connects to our head in addition to our heart. And that's the best way to recall, remember, and learn, and also to motivate. So remember, it's important to connect to the emotional side of the brain and the other side of the brain, which is just learning. And so can you forward to the next slide, please? So in terms of telling a story, the way it was taught to us is that basically what we want to do, we want to use our wisdom, our lived experiences in order to motivate people. And that's the way we tell our own personal story, our personal narrative. And the components, there are three components to telling your story. The first one is a challenge, a choice, and an outcome. In the challenge, you want to share with your audience what did you feel, or how did you interact, or what did you do when you were challenged? And the choice is, what choice did you make? Where did you find encouragement? Or where did you get hope? How did you feel? And the outcome is, why did it feel that way? What did it teach you? What do you want the audience to learn? How do you want the audience to feel? So those are things that you should incorporate in your stories. And why do we do this? Well, we do this because, again, we want to connect to the emotional side of the brain. We want to let people know how to get involved and why they should care. This is really key because most of the people we'll be talking to, they're busy, and we need to go beyond and be above just providing them with knowledge. And we do this to inspire them and also to motivate them to take action. Okay, next slide, please. And so developing your public narrative or personal narrative, basically there are three components. The first one is a story of self. And that invites people into relationship with you. And basically what you're telling is a story about why you're called to do what you're doing. You can share your beliefs, you can share your values. It's to reveal something about yourself, key moments that shaped your values or your desires or your concerns. You want people to know why an issue is important to you. Why do you feel you have to do something about it? And the second component is the story of us. And this is when you connect your values or your experiences to the values, goals, and purposes of the audience. You want to share, by the end of this segment, you want to make some form of connection with the audience. And then the third step is to invite others to join or take meaningful action. You want to encourage them. You want to ask, are you willing to do this? And if you are, you should contact this number, or you should contact this website. But the story of now is really an ask. And you are asking people and inviting people, others, to join you in your meaningful action. Okay, next slide, please. And so after you finish developing your stories, what you want to do is connect all of them together so that you create one story. Now, what was very interesting is that during the learning, we were always sharing stories. The story of self, us, and now. And maybe we had like 3 to 5 minutes, but at the end, we had to bring these stories all together into one. And we had to do it within 3 minutes. So sometimes you'll have stories or maybe 5 minutes, 3 minutes, or 1 minute. But I don't know, do we have a timekeeper? I don't know how much time I have, but I wanted to share a part of my story.
Please do. I'm the timekeeper, and I forgot to mention, I'm gonna give each team a 5-minute warning, so.
Okay, all right. So I'll just share what I've learned. And again, it's an ongoing process. You'll learn that is the goal of the training, is not to walk away with a final script, but just to learn the process. So I'll try to make mine brief. So in this public narrative, I'm speaking with healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, anyone who's in the healthcare field. So here we go. My name is Susan Bradshaw, and like many of you, I am a healthcare provider. I am a preventive medicine physician, and during my childhood, my parents celebrated their biannual checks from the Inglewood oil fields in Los Angeles, California. While they celebrate the money, many of my mother's relatives developed cancer. In fact, all of her brothers and sisters developed GI cancer. Most of them died, including my mother. So recently, my sisters and cousins were happy to discover that these cancers were not genetic. We've all been tested, and so far, no one has the gene. But the problem is they're probably linked to environmental toxins. And so when I found out that about the problems that were people in my mother's neighborhood that she grew up in were having, my family just seemed like, oh, well, we're just happy it's not genetic. The town that she grew up in was surrounded by water, where large cargo ships would dump their waste, and planes frequently sprayed pesticides on the crops, especially in the areas with low income populations. So I thought, although my cousins didn't appreciate it, I thought, why do I care? Why do I always feel like I just go the extra mile? I, like many of you, are very busy and don't have the time or energy to commit to another project. Does anyone else wonder why people like us care? What makes us tick? What motivates us to make the world a better place? I remember my first year in medical school, and a group of my cohorts talked about this subject. Healthcare providers just have a sense of compassion and service like no one else. We seek to heal. We seek to treat. We are well respected by patients and community members. We naturally serve as advocates for patients, their families, and loved ones. Healthcare providers have the compassion, experience, desire, and training to address climate change, Regardless of our specialty, titles, or classifications, people like us want to and are trained to take action individually and collectively. Well, not only are we effective in healing people, but we have a track record of being effective in healing the earth. Does anyone recall the contributions that healthcare providers made to environmental health? When back in the 1800s, the air, the water, and the environment were leading causes of death and illness? Does anyone recall someone by the name of Dr. John Snow? He was an anesthesiologist who basically is considered, back in the 1800s, was considered the founder of modern epidemiology. His work led to the source of an outbreak in London in 1854. Although he was an anesthesiologist, he is attributed to making a significant improvement in the water and waste systems of London and his contributions have improved the general public health around the world. In addition, other healthcare providers have helped. The AMA has been very instrumental in developing and creating schools of public health. They were also instrumental in developing the public health and preventive medicine residency program, which I'm board certified in. However, although many of the public health and preventive medicine physicians work in this area, we are few in number, and we've always worked in collaboration with other healthcare providers. We're all familiar with the negative impact of unhealthy environments and the increasing impact on family, friends, and communities. However, to overcome the challenges that we are facing, we need to unite. We need to pull together to save the earth, our new patient, and create a more sustainable and healthier planet. We have done this before and we can do it again. And when we come together, we can help our communities as well as those who are burdened by toxic hazards. We can create more effective policies. We can select better leaders. We can help create a more sustainable planet for the future generations. I am asking everyone in the audience to join me in the fight to improve the climate by joining Climate Health Now. If you don't want to join, will you just please sign up for a newsletter or just attend one meeting? Climate Health Now has been successful in organizing healthcare providers and affecting policy. And what I enjoy most about Climate Health Now is that the members are very compassionate and welcoming. They meet you where you are. So if you need training, they provide it for no cost. If you're already trained, then maybe you can seek other avenues and become a leader. And for those who are really busy, they have ways to incorporate you into the fight. Our membership is open to a diverse group of healthcare providers, and that includes physicians, nurses, pharmacists, and anyone else. So for more information, please go to our website and join us as soon as possible. Thank you. So that's one of my public narratives. And can I go to the next slide, please? So the lesson I learned is that sharing wisdom is very powerful. Creating connection is crucial. We had to practice. Well, first we usually saw a video first, and then we practiced again and again and again. And at the end, we learned a process to create a public narrative. We just didn't leave with a final script. So thank you. And I will pass this along to the next speaker.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Graber. I'm a pediatrician in San Jose, California. And I'm going to be speaking to you all this afternoon about the section of our Catalyst Collective that was related to relationship building. Could I have the next slide, please? So as a 56-year-old human, I felt like I knew what it meant to be in relationship with other humans. But this particular section of the collective did help to put the ideas about relationship in very practical and learnable strategies that I hadn't necessarily thought about before in my relationships. And the first idea was, of course, the idea of trust, that when we're in relationships with people who we hope to recruit to our cause, it's really important that there be an alignment of purpose, that our intent with them is similar, and that we use our social capital, our familiarity with people, to help further our cause. Next slide, please. Of all of the different sources of power in society, which include skills and knowledge and material resources, having authority, using sanctions and other intangible factors, people, although they seem to be small, as in this picture, are actually the most important source of power, and our connections to other people are what can make the difference when we're hoping to push things in a direction that in the end we hope will save our planet. Next slide, please. So part of the work of this month's relationship building was first to kind of clarify what our vision of tomorrow was. So picking a particular goal. For me, I decided to focus on my very local community, which is a pediatrician group of 80 pediatricians, and try to figure out how I might involve more of them in this vision of climate health now. And in developing this vision of tomorrow, we were to come up with some pillars that supported what felt to me like the opposite of what I was trying to do, like pillars that supported the status quo. So things that we might have to overcome in order to get to the vision of tomorrow that we were looking to bring to fruition. And once we had those pillars that were supposedly opposite of our vision, or maybe standing against our vision, we tried to develop a list of people within those pillars that we had some sort of connection with, that we could use our social capital to influence. And one very interesting piece of that influence on social capital was that the difference between pushing and pulling. If we pull and use our relationships from the inside, it's generally more effective than if we try to push people through guilt or shame from the outside. It takes a lot more force to make that kind of a change. So using people we knew and pulling them along with us was to be a more effective way of getting things done. Next slide, please. So after we had developed that idea of a vision of tomorrow, we actually had a practice where we met one-on-one. I met with Adrienne, and we were to have a meeting that was to give us a kind of framework of how we might meet with people who we were hoping to bring into our vision of tomorrow. And the meeting included these areas of ways of communicating, giving attention to how we were connecting with the person, saying who we were and how we knew the person we were connecting with, indicating our interest, why we wanted this particular person to talk to us, exploring what things we might have in common and who we were and what was important to us. And then what did we have to offer each other, and how could we support each other in work that we were doing? And then the final kind of most perhaps uncomfortable piece was working at getting some kind of commitment from that person, which I have to say probably did not happen in my discussion with Adrienne. We actually felt that our time was very short, and we probably didn't even get through all of these areas of communication. But we did feel that we felt connected. It felt like a valuable interaction and a useful tool to be able to use in further thinking about how to bring about our vision of tomorrow. So that was what we spent the month of October doing in our Catalyst Collective. And it ended up being a really interesting way to think about how to be in communication and connection with others in the community that we're hoping to influence. So I think that was all I was going to say about our October piece, and I'll pass it off to Nightingale.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'm gonna talk with my video off. I apologize. But so just to touch really briefly and mostly build off of what Ray's talked about, which is the art and science of team building. And Ray's already walked us through like the conditions that we need for a well-functioning team, which is have it well bounded. So we need to have clarity as to who is in and who is not in. And then we have a stable team. So we need to know the participation, the attendance, not people attending one day and not showing up the next day. And then we have to spend so much time explaining to the people who didn't show up, and we know they will not show up again the next time. So we end up wasting so much time. And then, like Ray's mentioned, diversity, where we ensure that all the skills needed within that team are represented. So then one of the other things is what is a well-functioning team? This is a team that actually gets the job well done. And this is where we also look at the capacity building of the collective, the entire unit and not just the individual. But so we need to be sure that for a good team, everybody is growing together. But again, that the individuals also are growing and developing as leaders, because when we look at the team, we don't have that one person who is above everybody. We're all leaders working collaboratively, and we may have like a team coordinator, but we're all leaders working towards the same goal. So really just wanted to touch a little bit on that little section, and to say that it's been a beautiful and an amazing journey for me, having to tie in a few knots from my life when I'm in Africa, and then my life in the US with my children, and thinking about just me as a mother, as a nurse, and as a community member. It's a really beautiful journey walking with everybody, and looking forward to CHN growing more and more. So I'll hand over to Angelina.
All right, thank you. So I'm Angelina Cranzion. I'm an allergist in Davis, and like many of you, I joined CHN after the fires of 2020. Really drove home the urgency of addressing climate change, and I really realized that I had a duty to tell the stories of my patients whose health is directly affected by climate change, to really try my best to kind of save the world. I mean, it's not really a small goal at all, right, when you think about it. And joining the Catalyst Collective, I thought I knew how to tell stories. After all, medical school is all the rounds, all you learn is basically how to get that H&B and stringing those bits of data together to really support a compelling argument. But it turns out that the fastest way to a human heart is not through the fourth intercostal space, but through shared experiences of self, and to really identify commonalities and motivate through shared purpose. And so I think, for many of us, I think the first module in September was really, the most kind of inspiring part, where we really learned to craft compelling personal stories, which were really inspiring. And that really was one of my highlights of this course. We then learned how to build relationships. Again, something that really seemed intuitive, but really was not, especially when you're trying to get someone to commit to a cause and really to push on the institutions that have power to change things in our world. It really is the difference between an acquaintance and a friend, I realized. And how do you make more friends? You do that by having common interests and common goals and shared experiences. And a friend is, someone you can call on for help. And we need as many friends as we can to bring about change. And then using those relationships, we learned about how to structure effective teams. Again, like many of you, trained as a doctor, we had kind of, attendings, fellows, residents, interns, med students. You had this kind of hierarchical, clear pecking order with top-down leadership. And the idea of distributed teams was somewhat of a realization. And I think that's really important because, as we know, climate change is really the biggest group project, and we can't rely on one person or even one organization to really improve the world. It really does require a multitude of effective teams to support this common goal. So if you can advance the slide for me. So kind of bring it all together to build our climate movement. We really worked on that last part about team building and structuring really, again, these independent leadership teams is really the core of successful organizing effort. And it really creates that structure because I think, like many of you, we're all sitting here like, oh my gosh, feeling overwhelmed. What can we do? And just like Ashley and Amanda got together and formed this small team, we're starting to branch out and build more of these teams to have effective teams to affect change. And so as our last part, we did practice kind of building teams, kind of working through assigning roles to achieve shared goals. And then we're kind of tasked to think about the future and how we see ourselves going forward in the climate movement as healthcare professionals. Just gonna advance the slide. So as the sun kind of sets on our group's journey together here, I know that the sun will rise on a multitude of awesome new opportunities for all of us to use our new skills in many different ways. And so I think I have no doubt as we continue to share all stories, and we continue to build our relationships within our organizations and communities, and we work together in effective teams, we can really accomplish the feat of making the world a better place. And so with that, we have some time for Q&A. I just want to again really thank Ashley and Amanda for all the work that they've put into this.
Do you want to come off to have a round of applause for team one? This is so cool. Really, really great work. Yeah, it's so awesome to see you all, stepping up. Like we're all leaders, it's really wonderful. We have a question in the chat. Angelina, where is that beautiful picture taken from?
That was Thanksgiving weekend at Pescadero Beach. Yeah, so it's the only time we get to enjoy the sunset with young kids is when it goes down at like 4:30 at the beach in the winter. So.
Does anybody have a question?
You guys did a great job summarizing it. Having lived through it, you guys did a great job.
I really love the thoughtfulness that everyone put into this, especially around the relationship building. And I was wondering, does anyone on your team, like when you were talking about this, did clear next steps emerge for you all in terms of like, oh, I actually know this person and I want to try one-on-one with them, or like, oh, I think it would be really beautiful for our group to like build a relationship with, XYZ organization. Like, did anything come to the surface for you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a great question. I think all of us on this call are thinking about next steps. I really feel like I'm still on the learning curve. So I'm just, in that sponge mode where I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, get to know as much as I can, and just, keep working and chipping away at this large project that all.
Oh, Race, you went on mute.
I was going to say, I really like what Nightingale had said, that, you know, we're not just mobilizing, we're organizing, and really, you know, finding better ways to organize my work and to organize those around me to be more efficient.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, I think definitely personally, I mean, I think it's always, you know, we're thinking about pillars and, you know, all this brainstorming is definitely like, I have like kind of people and, you know, things that are kind of swirling where it's like, yes, we definitely can, you know, start to maybe reach out and you know, again, I think some of the next, you know, the next groups maybe have more insight into that too, because that's one of the, I think group 3 or 2, I forget which one is going to talk about that too.
Yeah, I was reminded yet again of how pillars of support is so counterintuitive, and how important it is to remember that. And I think that's meaningful unto itself that it is counterintuitive, because certainly the status quo is very well supported. So I appreciated remembering that.
And also the part about how pulling is more effective usually than pushing, you know, and that that framework, I really want to hold that close as we kind of build the next chapters, that we put ourselves in positions where we are pulling in a more efficient, effective way. Yeah. Super wonderful. I really appreciate you all going through, you know, presenting for the first time, which is kind of nerve-wracking maybe as a team. And thank you also, Susan, for sharing your story in particular. I think, you know, there's a vulnerability in that, and I really appreciate you, you know, demonstrating September and our work in September. And there, just to remind on that seed that there could be a group of us or a couple of us who are interested in collecting stories and trying to you know, put them all into perhaps a book form or something, so that we can tug on those heartstrings of our colleagues and even the general population about why health professionals care so dearly about the climate crisis. So just kind of keep your eye open for if we invite you to share your story, if you're inspired to do that, because it would be really beautiful to collaborate that all into one powerful collection. Yeah. So any other questions for team 1? Awesome. Okay, well, let's go ahead and take our break. I'm gonna put the feedback form in. Yeah, sure. So if you want to do this feedback form, if you want to start it now, that'd be great. Or we will have a little bit of time to do it around 3:30 or so, but it would be really, really meaningful to get your fresh perspective on what went really well, what would you change? Say we do this again next fall. You have the insider's view on how to make it stronger. So if you could take a few minutes to do that feedback form, either now if you want or later, and then we will gather all back together right at 2 p.m. for team 2 to talk about our decarbonizing healthcare landscape analysis, which I'm really excited for. And thank you also for those of you not part of the Catalyst, but who joined, like Jeff, Cynthia, Cynthia Mahoney, thank you for joining. We appreciate you joining in to celebrate. And I'm also going to stop the recording, and then we'll come back together right at 2 p.m.
If you actually,